I'm sure they'd love to be able to have as many sort of staff available right there and then for everybody. That would be in an ideal world, but they just don't have the resources to do that. And the way that people can help is understanding when to access the right care, which is obviously a big part of the campaign that we did.
Hi, I'm Alice.
And I'm Alex.
And we're both project managers at Esky.
Yes. And today we're going to be discussing a project that we worked on last year on behalf of our client, Humberside LMC. So it was mainly around sort of primary care workers. There were different phases to the campaign. But the primary sort of part of it was abuse towards primary care workers and obviously front of house staff and things like that. And abuse is something that obviously staff have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And it got to a point where obviously a lot of staff were leaving, they were getting complaining, obviously on sickness leave due to stress and things like that. So Humberside LMC thought they needed to do something to make those people feel like that they were being heard, basically. So obviously there's a lot of reasons why people get frustrated when they ring up maybe the GP or they're trying to get an appointment, and we completely understand that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It can be really frustrating when you're trying to get an appointment, but I think the main point of it was to make sure that people just consider the way that they're speaking, like that is still a person at the end of the day, and obviously they've got limited resources and having to deal with sort of phone call after phone call of maybe being spoken to and not the best way.
And understand if you are making a call obviously about your health, you do have that extra level of stress and you feel like they don't understand what I'm going through, like they just don't get it, like I am my number one priority at the minute, like that's all you think about. But you know, they're getting so many calls in a day, so it's hard. It is
a really hard one because you see it from both sides. Like I completely understand that it can be a stressful time. I think we all understand that, but I guess we had to do something to sort of give those people a voice that like there is someone out there that helps and cares, and just to tell people that abuse won't be tolerated. And obviously if you are abusive towards staff, then but we'll get into that. There's a little bit more to it than for what we did anyway.
So there's many reasons why we did it, but the main one was to put a campaign together to be the voice of the primary care workers across Humberside, and to put the message out there that abuse just won't be tolerated anywhere. And it was really clear that we wanted the message to be firm, educational, and just to make the staff feel like they were supported and they weren't on their own in this, which is key. Definitely.
I think it's quite easy for them to feel sort of forgotten about. So if we just touch on what we did then, so we created a range of we wanted them to be educational, not just sort of abuse won't be tolerated. We wanted to make sure that we're actually educating people, because I know that sometimes it can be quite confusing what different staff offer in general practice. So that was a big part of what we did. So we did it in 3 phases. So the first one was around abuse, so making the public aware that sort of any kind of abuse won't be tolerated, as you've just said. The second phase was sort of outlining what each of the roles within primary care do, or in specifically general practice. So obviously how general practice used to be was that you'd have a doctor and you'd see that doctor and you'd maybe have the same doctor, but that's just not, they can't do that anymore. There's too many people that access care when maybe sometimes they don't need to be accessing the GP. I think it's just making people aware of when to access which was another phase that we did. So the roles was just really simply outlining what each role was within general practice, what they could help you with, and basically just understanding that if you are seeing a nurse or a different primary care staff member, you're still going to be getting the same level of care. They've trained for years. Just because they haven't got the title of sort of GP or doctor, they're still more than capable of helping you. So obviously that's why you go through the receptionist, who is hopefully going to send you to the right person. Which a lot of them got was if a patient's not seeing a doctor, sometimes they get frustrated and think they're not getting the best level of care, but that's just not the case. Yeah,
it definitely gets lost in translation, that, and I think it's definitely key to be one of the messages out there, because I know a lot of people be like, oh, I'm seeing a different doctor, they don't know me, they don't know my history and everything. It's like, well, they've got everything in front of them. Like, there's
and not
no
even a
reason.
doctor, it could be any, like a nurse. I'm being very general here. There's so many different roles within general practice that are more than capable of helping, but it's just they just can't do that anymore. They can't just have the same GP that you see, unfortunately, which would be amazing if you could.
I know personally where I live, we're now getting directed to a completely different surgery. So, you know, not only do we not have the same GPs, like it's a completely different place. And I think that is becoming the norm now. But again, a lot of people are like dead against it.
Because I think especially the older generation that have been used to having that available to them, for it to just kind of, now it's more of they have a lot of walk-in centres, don't we? A lot of, it's a completely different way it's working, but I think it's obviously the future. It's the end direction it's going in. So we just need to make sure that as many people as possible are aware of what it is. And it's maybe not what everyone would like, but unfortunately they don't have enough resources to be able to do that anymore. And then the third one was about accessing primary care in general. So obviously you've got your pharmacy, you've got your doctor, your general practices, A&E, and it was just making like a really simple graphic, like a guide, and we also did a little animation to know when to go to those different places for different conditions and when to treat yourself at home. So a lot of people, obviously I'm generalising again, but some people do access services when they maybe don't need to. I know that obviously health can be a worry, but a lot of things can be tried at home that maybe people might think they need to go to A&E or they need to go to see a GP about, but sometimes you don't need to do that. So it's just knowing when to see the right people. Obviously, if there's any a health concern, you need to make sure you're getting it checked out, but for a cold or something like that.
Well, a prime example of that is when COVID first came about, they were like, right, if you display any symptoms, immediately call 999. And then it gradually got to, well, if your symptoms aren't as bad and you still have it, call 111. And then it got to the point where if you're able to treat yourself at home, do it. But at the start, it was rushing everyone into hospitals. It was mad.
It was. I think that has maybe been a big factor on people worrying about their health, but also people weren't able to just access the general practice like they used to. So I think numbers did go right down. And whether that's just because people weren't accessing when they didn't need to, or if obviously a lot of things were missed. And you've got to be really careful how you talk about this, because I know that everybody's case is completely different.
Oh, yeah.
And we wouldn't want to offend anybody by what we're saying, because obviously we understand it can be really scary and frustrating. And I'm sure they want to be able to help. I'm sure they'd love to be able to have as many sort of staff available there and then for everybody. That would be in an ideal world, but they just don't have the resources to do that. And the way that people can help is understanding when to access the right care, which is obviously a big part of the campaign that we did. So if we just move on to the lessons learned, obviously the first one is involving professionals and getting to the bottom of the issue. So obviously we were told by Humberside LMC, who sort of work with practices across Humberside, that this was an issue. But we wanted to make sure that we're actually speaking to the people that are going through it. So we had lots of meetings and discussions with practice managers and reception staff, and even all just healthcare staff within general practice and primary care. Just making sure that we were speaking to them, getting to the bottom of the issue so that we can put a message out there that's the most accurate. Because obviously it is quite easy to assume, and they've got first-hand experience, they're the best people to... Yeah. We say this a lot to include people, but I think that is the key. Include the people that you're sort of being the voice for, or you're trying to target. Yeah,
otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, it's easy to assume.
Exactly, we're just a marketing agency. We can't even begin to think what GPs are going through.
Exactly. So.
The second lesson learned was that simplicity is often very effective. When we were developing phase 2 of the campaign, roles in general practice, we thought it was really important to make sure the visuals and videos were really simple and easy to understand. So, we had posters in GPs, we had social media posts. So wherever anybody was, like, for example, even if they can't access social media, they're able to walk into a GP and see the poster. And it's about making it as simple as possible, really, to understand.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter where you're from, they're all pretty universal.
Yeah. Because they were just simple. It was like the posters were just a picture of the staff member with some bullet points about how they can help you, just to make it so that those roles are introduced more. People accept that, I'm going to see a pharmacist today rather than a general practitioner, and they can help me. They can give me the same advice or help me with medications. Or because I think a lot of staff members can also prescribe medication, which it used to only be general practitioners that could. So I think that's maybe a big reason why people only want to see
them,
doctors or general practitioners. So the third and final lesson learned was to just give people a voice. So we obviously, across the 3 different phases, we were making them as educational as possible, but we also wanted to have a human element and make it so that people had a voice. So we did a short film with general practice staff, primary care staff to just show the human side of it. So you could see how much it affected those people, which is sad. Like the abuse that they go through on a daily basis. We just really wanted to give them that voice and that platform to be able to just let people know how it affects them and hopefully try and change behaviours.
We get quite a lot of verbal frustration, which is felt by patients.
Some of them will say COVID is a load of rubbish, why can't you see us, you know, what's the big issue, it's a quick appointment.
I know where you are, I'm going to come and bomb the building, I'm going to make sure we'll wait for you outside. We get a lot of racial abuse towards the GPs.
I've had comments made about like how I look and that kind of thing as well.
You're threatened with your family, you're threatened where you live, you're threatened that they're going to find you on social media.
Banging and kicking on the wall and the windows.
This is the point where I must thank our receptionist and our admin team.
Why am I telling this person all this personal information? All I want to do is see my GP. What they don't understand is the role of the care navigator.
They're like a filter, the gatekeepers.
People like say to the reception team, I hope you get cancer and you shouldn't be doing your job, what you're doing. And I think that's really unfair when all they're trying to do is help.
Yeah, it makes a massive difference, like we said before, actually getting the case studies rather than like, you know, you could get an actress to read off a script and say, this is how I feel and make it really generic. But the best content, like the human content, is when you really get that emotional side, which is, like we say, absolutely key in everything that we do.
Sure. So, yeah, that's all of the lessons learned from that project. Obviously, we'll link the campaign and any videos at the bottom so that you can have a look at it. It is a really nice campaign, and we are actually redeveloping it for a different client, NHS North Eastern Yorkshire. So they're adapting the visuals, we've sort of rebranded it, but it's the same sort of concept. So obviously it's been working, we've been asked to sort of work on this for another client as well, so that just shows that it's actually gone really well.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
Which is always good to hear.
it is. So thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye.